Welcome to the Blind Justice Podcast, where you discover the insider secrets of injury and accident cases, and all of your law questions get answered. Now, here's your host, Chicago injury lawyer, Scott DeSalvo.
Hey guys, it's me, Scott DeSalvo, your favorite personal injury lawyer, and my amazing co-host,
Amelia Finnefrock.
Back at you with another Blind Justice Podcast.
Woohoo!
Why did I name it the Blind Justice Podcast?
Yeah, that's a great question.
We're like kicking the knowledge on this thing.
Yeah.
So we're like unmasking or like removing the blindfold.
So it's ironic.
So
blind.
it's horrible that I called it the Blind Justice. I mean, we're far too far into it for me to change the name.
Well, no, I think it's funny. Like, I think
it's kind of like Blind
it's
Justice. Like, hey, what's up?
And I feel like it's very like movie star. Like
I think honestly, I think the main thing is that the icon. I had like that video icon of the woman with the scales.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, what could I call this? Scott's Legal Minute. No, because it's longer than a minute. Injury
to insult, maybe?
Show.
Yeah.
Law guy show.
Sure.
And I'm like, no. Like, I'm just like, okay, Blind Justice, done. So many things in my life are like that. I'm like, good enough.
Yep.
Next.
Done. Fine. We're good.
Yeah, it's the decision-making process of a always busy sort of fella. So what's new with you, Amelia?
I think we talked about this last time. I'm in an improv show, and we just started rehearsals for it, and that's going to be coming up in October, which is really exciting. So we're actually workshopping it first. We're writing it, then workshopping it, and then performing it. So this is my first undertaking with something to this degree, so this should be very fun. And
so is it with an existing improv troupe or a new one?
A new one. Well, I don't know if I would call ourselves a troupe per se. We're doing a play. We're doing Noises Off, the play, and we're rewriting it. So we're in a cast. But it's an improv show. So I would say troupe. But yeah, so I'm doing that, and I am working on some music with a friend downtown. And I told you earlier.
Original stuff? Or?
Yes, original stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I was losing my marbles because I thought it was... his name's Evan. He was like, hey, like, my friend's studio is downtown. I'm like, oh, okay. And I just, like, pictured it like a small apartment, someone, working out someone's bedroom, like, whatever, which is fine. I go, and it's like...
So wait a minute. You initially thought that you were going to do some recording, and you thought he was going to take you to his bedroom?
Oh, God.
What kind of friend is this Evan character? Watch me get paternal.
His friend's bedroom. His friend's bedroom.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool then.
Because I'm like used to having that degree, of like, oh, I have a home studio and it's my twin beds also.
Conveniently right here.
Actually,
in case you get
I will say
tired.
this is the best. Up until this point, this is like also very professional. I will say, it's in an office. No one's bed is anywhere near our recording equipment. And I go and I realize, like, I'm thinking, oh, he's probably like really well off. He lives downtown and whatever. And so then I realized it's an actual recording studio. So I'm like trying to not be a dork. They're like, oh, welcome, take a seat. And I'm like gawking. Oh my God, this is so cool. Right before I go in.
So like legit sound tiles on the wall and the whole thing.
The board was legitimately like the size of this table.
So like an 8-foot soundboard or something.
I felt like Britney Spears. Before she went crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
before she shaved her head and all that stuff.
I never did it.
Well, that's cool. That's going to be exciting. Like, things
fun.
are moving forward for you in your career.
Absolutely. It's
awesome.
very cool. How about you?
Oh, traveling a lot, going to seminars, stuff like that. Set up a seminar here in Chicago for injury lawyers. We had a prominent guy who does a lot of medical malpractice come in and give a speech. And, other than that, just working hard on cases and moving them along and getting them ready for trial. That's usually enough for anyone's plate, but I always overload mine.
Right. What do you do to, like, between all this traveling to relax?
Not enough, clearly.
Besides this podcast,
I
of course.
read a lot, which is like, look, if you do what I do for a living and you're a lawyer and you're always reading books on the law and taking seminars and doing research on your cases, it is sort of the saddest thing you can possibly say when somebody asks you what you do for fun to say that you read. But I do read.
Oh, that's good.
And I also am, we've talked off air. I'm a huge fan of movies. I love movies. I love horror movies for some reason.
Oh, my goodness.
Horror
So
movies
brave.
and like sci-fi movies are, like the Alien movies are some of my favorite. And, I try and get some exercise in, and I like to try new restaurants, romantic walks on the beach.
Oh, yeah.
I like to compose poetry to my love. Okay. Maybe not the poetry
Well, now we
part.
have to hear some of the poetry, Scott.
Will a dirty limerick suffice?
Dirty limerick.
Anyway. So the topic for today's podcast is, a lot of times I pick these topics based on questions I get. So if any of the listeners have a question and you want to send me a question that you want to hear about on air, you can send that to Scott with 2 T's at DeSalvoLaw.com. That's my email address here. And you can send me any questions you have, or if you got show topics or comments on the show, feel free to email them to Scott at DeSalvoLaw.com. But the topic today that we're going to talk about are cases against the Chicago Transit Authority, CTA. And so there's we've signed up a few interesting different kinds of cases, and I thought it would be cool for people to get like the inside baseball on CTA cases, because there's actually a few kinds of cases. Some of them are better than others, and I think it would be helpful for people who maybe ride the CTA to know what's what in case they get hurt on the CTA.
I want to know, because I read the CTA.
You do?
I'm not proud of it, but I do.
Yeah, I've ridden the CTA my whole life. Even as a little kid, my family would when my dad was at work, my mom would take the kids and we'd hop on the CTA. So I grew up riding it, and I hate to say it, I feel like it's not as well run as it was when I was a kid. I feel like the bus drivers drive the buses sort of erratically and jerky, and there's all kinds of stuff going on at the train station. So there's not going to be a lot of structure to this podcast, but there's 3 cases in the office here that I want to talk to you about a little bit. So one kind of CTA case is a case where it's just a motor vehicle crash, right? Just on the street, and it involves a CTA bus or a CTA vehicle.
Right.
So, for example, and this is probably like the least common kind of CTA case, is we had like a CTA manager driving a CTA SUV, not a passenger vehicle.
I wonder what that looks like.
It's just like a SUV that has CTA painted on the side.
And we know it goes very slow, right?
Well, I wish it was going slower and wouldn't have rear-ended my guy on the expressway.
Oh, no.
But usually when we have these crashes, it's a bus versus a car, or a bus versus an SUV, right? And so these buses are tens of thousands of pounds heavy.
Yeah.
And so when they hit a car, they'll clobber you.
Oh,
and one of the things that you ought to know is all of the CTA buses are equipped with cameras. So they have cameras inside the bus, multiple cameras inside the bus. They have cameras pointing behind the bus, and they have cameras pointing forward on the traffic.
Oh, I didn't know they had that many.
Yeah, they have
outside.
cameras all over, and they're recorded on hard drives in the bus.
Wow.
And the funny thing, my injury lawyer friends and I always joke about, and it's really nothing, it's not funny because the CTA gets away with it, but whenever the video would help an injured person's case, CTA claims that the video cameras malfunctioned and they don't have the video.
Oh, come on.
So, for example, if you have a red light case where a CTA bus is running through a red light, they don't have the video. Or if there's a big collision between the bus and a light pole that shows everybody on the bus being jostled and thrown out of their seats, they lost that video.
Yeah, that's suspicious.
I have yet to have the CTA produce a video in a case where the video was helpful.
So do they really have cameras then all around?
No, they
recording?
do for sure, because they're happy to share the video with me when it doesn't show much, right? Or if it exonerates them.
That's so gross.
But it happens, it happens all the time. And so, so we have the first category is like traffic accidents involving CTA vehicles. And if a bus hits somebody because of its weight, it can cause a major collision, right?
I'm sure.
The other kind of injury case that I get a lot of calls on is a person on a bus or on a train who is getting on the bus or getting off the bus, and these buses and these drivers drive the buses so jerky. Mm-hmm. Now, I've been on a lot of buses, and you could probably comment on this.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get on a bus or a train, and you think, okay, it's a big, heavy bus, so it can't accelerate quickly.
Right.
Or change speed quickly.
Wrong.
Really not true.
Yeah.
And when you're on your feet and the ground is wet, like the floor of the bus is wet, it is easy for the bus to like accelerate or jerk or lurch.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been on buses that have done that, right?
Yeah, and as a seasoned CTA rider, you quickly learn, I'm sure you know this as well, like to have that sturdy stance, make
right,
sure
the wide.
Yeah, you have something in your in the vicinity to hold on to, but when it gets packed, and the weather's bad, you don't really have much to hold on to. You definitely have to, hold your ground. But yeah, I mean, there are many times that I've slipped and fell, and I mean, I'm fine. No injury law cases from that, but definitely could see someone maybe being a little older and having, God forbid, I had a cast on or, was in a wheelchair. It really isn't safe. Like the way they drive, the bus drivers, I mean, it's just so, jerky.
Yeah, another thing to think about is it's not like there's always a grip. Like let's say the bus is like speeding up on your way to your seat, and the bus is like lurching and jerking. I'm assuming that's when they change gears. I don't even know.
I don't know.
But, sometimes it's like you have to let go of your hand grip before you can get the next one, right? And then, like you said, if it's an older person or a person with mobility problems or even somebody carrying bags, right? Like if they've got a box or a bag with them, that's going to throw you off balance a little bit too. Those are tough cases, and those are the kinds of cases that CTA loves to produce the video. Because on the bus, the camera moves along with the bus, right?
Oh,
so when the bus jerks on the inside video camera, it doesn't look like anything.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, and if you show it to a jury, the jury's like, okay, it doesn't look like the bus is jerking to me.
And so then you have to say, well, keep in mind the camera is moving with the bus.
And that's why those cases are hard. And the CTA, the cases where it's a fall on the bus because it's jerking or lurching, those cases are really hard to prove. And the CTA always argues that everybody knows that that's how the buses operate, that they jerk and they lurch and they stop and they speed up very quickly. And so it's your duty to protect yourself against it, which is, it's a surprisingly common argument, and they do pretty well making that argument. I mean, my response to that is, look, just because we know that you are forcing us into a dangerous situation by your conduct doesn't mean that makes your conduct safe or okay. The other thing is, if you're a passenger on the CTA owes you a duty they owe you basically a special duty of care, more than just like if your friend gives you a ride in his car.
This is news.
Right, because the CTA is considered a common carrier, right? Meaning they are in the business of transporting people, and they owe you the highest degree of care. Yeah. So, I don't know. CTA has an advantage over other kinds of defendants because when they're defending a case, there's really only a few kinds of ways people sue CTA in an injury case, right? Mm-hmm. A traffic crash, or somebody falls on the bus or on the train.
Right.
And then their lawyers handle all those cases. So they're only handling a couple of categories of cases.
Right.
It's like if you were going to try to become a basketball player. but you didn't. The only thing you had to focus on was free throws, right?
Yeah.
You could stand at the free throw line every day and get really good at free throws.
Sure.
That's like their lawyers. They're defending, very similar cases. So it's easier because they get experience doing that stuff. So I would say those are probably the two most common kinds of CTA cases. There are other kinds, but the fall on the bus because it's lurching or somebody – I actually have one where one of the metal strips – that goes sidewise the way you walk when you're getting off the bus.
Right.
It actually was up. And the lady tripped and fell forward and hit her head on the windshield of the bus.
Oh, my God.
So, I mean, she had the presence of mind to take a picture of the metal strip sticking up. But I don't know how a bus gets placed in service with something sticking up like that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that's still categorized as a fall on a bus case, and I just signed up a very serious injury case where a CTA bus ran a light. But I would say those are the two most common. But if you have any questions, anybody listening, if you're involved in a situation where you or a loved one's injured involving the CTA, definitely just give us a call at the office. We're happy to talk to you. And I've been handling cases against the CTA for, almost 20 years now. So I know how to handle them. And, it used to be years ago when I was a young lawyer that you could settle a fair number of them. That has really changed over the years. The CTA fights them now. They fight them tooth and nail.
Well, I feel like and I think we talked about this on a previous podcast, that a lot of the CTA employees seem to be overworked. And that's why that crash, I think it was about 2 years ago, when a Blue Line train went up an escalator because the woman driving the train fell asleep because she was working these crazy amount of shifts for the CTA. And I'm pretty sure she got jail time for it because people died in that.
Yeah, no, that was a major case. And that's true. Over the years, I've seen stories in the newspapers, the Tribune and the Sun-Times, where the Chicago Transit Authority has been reducing the number of people at employees working at each train station, reducing the number of bus drivers, reducing the number of even operators on the bus. I mean, or train rather. Yeah. And I think we're at the point now where there is literally just one operator on each train.
I think you're right.
Which is kind of crazy. You would...
Something were to happen, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really bad news. Even if it's just one operator keeping an eye on another one.
Right.
You can have hundreds of people on those things, and it's bad news. I mean,
that ratio, that's surprising, actually, that's not illegal. One person to hundreds of people, that's how do they get away with that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Chicago Transit Authority is a branch. It's a part of the city of Chicago. It's a government entity, right? And so they're protected under the law on several things. And obviously, the city of Chicago wants to save money. The CTA wants to save money. And so I feel like they're cutting corners on safety. Right now, we've got a case where... You know how in the train stations, the train stops at the station and then you hear the chime, ding dong.
Sure.
This is blah, 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 doors opening. So what happened in the case I just signed up is the train stops, our guy looks out the window, he's at the train station, the chime plays and it says this is, whatever the train station is. He gets up and he starts walking to the doors and then the train lurches forward another 20 feet and stops again. Well, when it lurches forward, he's walking to the doors and he's not expecting the train to move.
Oh, no.
So he slips and falls and hurts himself really bad. And that's another thing, I'm going to find out in the course of litigation, are the chimes automatic or does the operator of the train play the door chime? And that's an interesting question because either way, let's face it, the only relatively safe place on a bus or train is in a seat. Mm-hmm. If that bus or train is moving when you're out of your seat, we all know it's dangerous. And the
Right.
CTA knows damn well it's dangerous.
Yes.
And so for them to play the chime, and then our guy gets up and he's walking and he's like, okay,
Time for me
this
to go.
is the rare time on a CTA bus or train that I'm safe.
Right.
I'm safe from a lurching, accelerating, decelerating, sudden stopping train or bus. And then he's walking and the thing lurches.
Right.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Right?
That's absolutely.
So, you know, I'm not going to lie. These cases are tough, and the CTA wants to take them all the way. But you can definitely win them if you've got an attorney who knows what to look for, who's going to take the time to actually look at the case and think about the case.
So are you able to request, because I know there's at least one camera in every train car.
Right. Mm-hmm.
In this, like, the center.
Yeah, more than one, I think.
Oh, okay. So is that also difficult to get a hold of when you need
Well,
that
it's
footage?
the same thing we were
It's the same
talking about
song and
before.
dance.
When it's good for us, there's a very high percentage that the video is lost or malfunction, right? But when the video is good for the CTAs, they have a very high percentage of being able to produce the video, which is nonsense, right? I almost want to, like, get injury lawyers together and, like, do a spreadsheet or a database.
Right.
And say, so weird.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, there's no way that you could subpoena them and say, regardless.
No,
of
we're
whether
gonna,
it's
that's what we do. We file a suit. There's no way to get the video until we file a lawsuit.
Right.
But we issue a subpoena for the video, and then they respond. And, you know, if I really think it's questionable, I can take some depositions of people who are responsible for the video. But at the end of the day, you know, they can be good cases. They can also be very tough cases.
Sure.